This week on the Pro Wrestling Podcast, Edge wins the 2021 Royal Rumble, and his best friend Christian makes a surprise return. Inside the Hart family home the day that Owen Hart passed away, the Clique takes a piss test, and the most infamous promo in pro wrestling history. I'm your host, Seth Grimes, and this is the Pro Wrestling Podcast.
I just want to be at a place where I don't have to get ready. I am ready. And that's what I need to try and maintain for however long I'm around. And so when I got word that they wanted me in the Rumble this year, I was ready. And then it became what it became. And that to me was just, I don't know. If you had told me all of this would be happening, I'd say you're crazy, and it's ridiculous. And to have Christian come back, I almost said Jay, to have Christian come back, it's a movie script that you'd say, nah, it's too cheesy because things can't go that good.
And you mentioned it for a second, the moment in the match when Christian returned.
You know, that's the stuff you can't try and map out. That's the stuff that you can't script. That's the stuff when wrestling works at its best level is when there's reality involved, when there's truth involved. If there's truth, the audience can see it because it's right here and down here. And I just had to take a moment. I didn't know I was on camera. I wanted to be out of the way for him. So I was out of the way, but I also wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to experience it and be able to soak that in because I was just so happy for him and also dumbfounded because this was actually happening.
Man, I'll say this. The Royal Rumble this year was fucking fantastic. For what it could be with no fans and everything else considered, I thought the idea of, first of all, props to Bianca Belair. I marked out so hard when I saw that she won. But Edge, we're talking about Edge here. Edge winning the men's Royal Rumble was a fucking surprise to me. I didn't think they'd do it. I love that. I think that's fucking awesome. I love the story that they can tell with that. And I think the return of Christian in the Royal Rumble, and you could see it on Edge's face, and you could see when they hugged in the ring, you could feel that emotion. Not to mention when Christian was out there, everybody in the ring fucking lined up one after the other. If you go back and watch, man, there were people feeding for Christian left and right. Big names, AJ Styles amongst them, wanted to get in there and mix it up with Christian, and it was awesome to see. Put a big old smile on my face, and I'm happy for Edge. It's a happy story. A man whose career was ended, taken away from him without him having a say in it. You know, he didn't get to go out on his own terms, and to have this chance to come back and redeem himself, and not even redeem himself because, you know, he left on top. He retired the championship, but to come back and be able to write his final chapter himself. And man, winning the Royal Rumble, like, he's already had a Hall of Fame career. Just add a Royal Rumble win on top of that. I mean, if you look back, a win in the Royal Rumble doesn't do it for everybody, but a hallmark of a Hall of Fame performance, a Hall of Fame career, is a win in the Royal Rumble. They are so rare. Only very few people can say they've won the Royal Rumble in the history that it's been around, and all the people that have been in it. And congrats to Edge, man. Fuck yeah. I love it. And great interview with Corey Graves and Vic Joseph. Absolutely go check that out. After the Bell drops every Thursday, wherever your mom's podcasts are found. Something to Wrestle was back in its normal time slot this week, and Bruce and Conrad were talking about the 1991 Royal Rumble. In this clip right here, we debate if the Ultimate Warrior was really on steroids.
So Slaughter wins the WWF title from the Anabolic Warrior in 12 minutes and 45 seconds. That's directly from the Observer.
Yeah, fuck him and those goddamn references. Has he ever looked in his little midget mirror that makes him get all puffed up and shit? Does he have one of those magical mirrors? Like, he's got to see something else in the mirror when he looks at it.
Yippee! Warrior comes out wearing...
Okay, why is it okay for this little shit...
Oh God!
Fucking put nicknames and shit on other people. Oh, but don't fucking disparage fucking Dynaball Dave.
Are you really? What are you doing right now?
What? I'm doing the same thing that the reporter, that the journalist.
Don't do that.
Huh?
No, can we just talk about the show? Why are you hot about what somebody wrote 30 years ago?
There's something that I find very offensive. When he puts names and
well, Jesus Christ,
like
are we gonna fucking debate whether or not Warrior was on steroids? Of course he was.
I don't know that.
Oh my God.
Of course he was. Jesus Christ. But do you really care? Honestly, does it matter to you personally if a wrestler's on steroids? Now, I'm not saying that I want anybody to get hurt, right? We're not talking about such a large amount of steroids where it's gonna like make your heart explode or anything like that. But honestly, like, beyond that, this isn't a real sport. It's not a competition. It's a show. Like bodybuilding, where bodybuilders use fucking steroids, or do they? Are they tested for that? I don't fucking know. They look like they do. So really, they do in Hollywood. So who gives a shit, honestly? But that's just my opinion. Maybe you care and you get all offended because they want a needle in their butt and whatever. But I say, if you're going to be a pro wrestler, you want to just bulk up, fucking go for it. Stick a needle in your ass, get the juice going, run wild, brother. Then they switch gears and talk about Hulk Hogan versus that evil, dirty, nasty turncoat Iraqi sympathizer, Sergeant Slaughter, right? G.I. Joe turned into Jihadi Joe. And him and Hulk Hogan, all roads lead from the Royal Rumble to that match at WrestleMania. Problem was, this little tiff in the Middle East that this storyline was based off of has now just officially been upgraded to a war.
I'm peak fandom here. I'm 9 years old. This is my shit, man. But I don't know that I would have called Sergeant Slaughter winning. In hindsight, I guess I should have. I just assumed, hey, we're going to do Hogan Warrior at WrestleMania 7, especially since some of the posters and whatnot had both of their logos on there. I just kind of felt like that's where we were going. But you go with Slaughter. In those 48 hours leading up to the event, once things really turn up in a major way, nobody considers calling an audible. I mean, I realize we're still going to have the match, but if Warrior beats him here, then maybe this thing's stamped out, and then we got to figure out something for WrestleMania. Was that just totally out of the question?
No, it wasn't totally out of the question. It just didn't happen. And I believe, goddamn, it was, so the show started at 7. It was at about 8:30 that like all hell broke loose over there. And then Bush came out. We have declared war. Because those words hadn't been spoken until that night. And it was like, we have declared war. We've had presence there. We've done this. But now we're declaring war. And I was like, motherfucker. It was right before the Rumble. I remember going, son of a bitch, could you have not just waited? I mean, we're in it. Go for it.
It's unbelievable that this is still the direction that we're heading.
I say go with it. I mean, Conrad seems like, oh, this is a bad idea. We should probably blah, 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 blah. Go with it. Lean into it, man. Okay. we're going to war with this country. And this guy, G.I. Joe over here, was fucking, he's hanging out with those guys. He's part of them. Get him. And everybody chases him down the street and hits him with sticks and shit. I think we're past the part of professional wrestling at this time where, you know, Sarge has gone on record and said he had death threats at that time, but I think we were past the point where everybody believes wrestling was real. I don't know. It worked for me as a kid, but I was a kid, so what the fuck do I know? I hated him for having a big chin. I hated him for beating the Ultimate Warrior, because what the fuck? This fat old bald guy that used to be on a cartoon that I watched, now he's a fucking terrorist, traitor, sympathizer, is gonna be the world champion, and he's gonna beat the Ultimate Warrior. It was nonsense. It was nonsense. But it didn't offend me. It just made me hate Sergeant Slaughter, which is the whole point. So, fuck it. Go with it. And they did go with it, and it didn't do great business, and they had to cancel they had this giant fucking arena stadium booked for WrestleMania. They were expecting 100,000 people, and they got 12,000 people. I don't know, but one of the more underwhelming main events of my youth for a WrestleMania. But I gotta tell you, I still loved that WrestleMania. But we're not talking about the Mania. We were talking about the 1991 Royal Rumble. At least Conrad and Bruce were talking about the 1991 Royal Rumble. And you can check that out right now, everywhere podcasts are found. And his podcast drops every single Friday. Probably. Kevin Nash was on X-Pac 12360 this week, talking about getting piss tested back in the day. Check it out.
We always had this theory that we would never get tested at TV or pay-per-views, just on house shows, because they got too much shit going on. Well, not that day. We show up and fucking on the wall drug test. So the whole day, man. I don't know what happened with you, Kev, but I avoided it the whole fucking day.
Me and Scott paid the guy $150 and he pissed for us.
Yeah, well, so that's what happened with me. But so Dave Hebner finds me, right? And he's like, "Oh, you got to do this promo." And they took the sign down off the door, and so he tricked me into walking into the drug test room. And so when I'm in there, I'm all hemming and hawing, and I'm like, "Oh, I don't think I can go." And he goes, "I'll piss for you for $200, dude." I don't think he was done saying it, and I had the money in my fucking hand. That guy made a lot of money that fucking day.
That's the only drug test that I didn't take during that time when we were drug tested was that one.
Me too, that one. Because they were stiff, man. It was hard to fucking, those tests were serious. They were trying to catch people.
I would have pissed resin that day.
I love how open and honest these guys are. You know, every time you hear these guys in interviews, they're not afraid to just speak from the heart, tell it exactly how it is. They're not afraid to admit that they were doing drugs or that they paid people off to take piss tests. I love that shit. I love that about them. And X-Pac is just a super earnest, kind-hearted guy. You can really tell the more you get to know him, the more you listen to him, the more you understand where he's coming from as a person. He's got a heart of gold. He really does, even though he glues people's hats to their heads and shit. But that's all in good fun, right? That's what you do when you're in wrestling and you're bored, is you glue the cowboy's hat to his head. Why not? You can check out X-Pac's podcast, X-Pac 12360, every Sunday wherever podcasts are found. Big E, or shall I say Big E Langston, the Intercontinental Champion, went on an epic rant on the New Day Feel the Power podcast this week, taking back his last name, because no man can take a last name from you. He is taking it back. Mr. Big E Langston, Check it out.
Yes. And I am Big E Langston. That's right. I said Langston. You want to know why? Because I'm going to speak it into existence. I'm going to say it and I'm going to put it out there in the universe. I'm going to speak my truth. I'm going to speak my destiny because that is who I feel like I always have been inside is Big E Langston. That's how I feel. I'm not just Big E. And no one ever in life can make me feel like I am just a Big E, that I am not worthy of a surname. No one can make me feel that way anymore. So I'm going to speak it into existence. My name is Big E Langston.
Yeah, man. I don't know if this was just a bit for the podcast or if it's something that he's been pushing for backstage. I don't know that I like the name Big E Langston. It's weird. I do think Big E sounds better in retrospect. Of course, you know, anytime anybody loses a name, it's awkward and we all kind of like, okay, that sounds funny. But you know, Big E works a lot better than I think Big E Langston, but I think there's something to be said. I mean, the dude wants a last name. Give the motherfucker a last name. You know what I'm saying? Like, who are we? Who is Vince? Who is anybody to take somebody's last name away from them? I think Mr. Langston deserves a last name, even though it does sound goofy. And to each his own, man. You can check out the New Days podcast, Feel the Power, every single Monday with Kofi and Xavier Woods and Big E Langston. Check it out. TJ Wilson, aka Tyson Kidd, was on Chris Van Vliet this week. His podcast called Insight, talking about where he was and how he heard of the death of Owen Hart. Check it out.
We were, you know, laughing about Owen's promo and then when the camera's on Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, it took a second to register, like, then it was like, oh, you know, Jim Ross is explaining that something happened to Owen. And I just remember, like, then I guess kind of like everybody else, you know, we're not sure if, is this an angle? Is this a part of the show? Is this like, what's happening here? And then like in my mind, man, in my memory, it just like, then kind of mayhem kind of ensues of like, whoa, what's going on here? Then like Davey found out that like Owen fell, but we weren't sure the result yet. And then I think we all stopped and then just head down to Stu's. From there, we get word about Owen passing away, and now like almost everyone's at Stu's. It's just like by the minute more cars are pulling up, and then I can remember like Vince. He does like a press conference or something that day. Yeah, that night. Yeah. And I think he called Stu's either right before or right after that press conference. I don't know which one. And I remember like the phone being passed around. Like I remember Bruce, you know, kind of Bruce Hart ripping into him, and you know, Vince. I obviously can't hear Vince on the other side, but I just know like, you know, Vince took it, and Stu was talking to him. I think maybe a few others talked to Vince on the phone that night. Yeah, man, I remember Stu. I can remember Stu saying like, Stu said something, and I don't know if it was like the promoter in him, but Stu said something like, he said something to the effect of like, man, I would like to Vince, like, I like almost like he felt bad for Vince. He said like, I feel bad for you. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes right now. And that's just how Stu was, like, just the way he handled things, man. Stu is so stoic.
I can't imagine being the Hart family and watching this on pay-per-view live, right? Like, what on earth would you be thinking? Obviously, like Tyson said, we thought it was a work at first. You know, we didn't know if it was part of the storyline or what was going on. I just can't imagine what would be going through the family's head at that time. You know, you're watching a pay-per-view, you're watching your brother or your uncle or whatever the fuck, and he's cutting this goofy promo and he's just being a character, and you're laughing about it 1 minute and the next minute he's gone, man. And you know, hearing how Stu took it and how Stu handled it, and everybody chewing out Vince and Stu just keeping it calm and stoic, as Tyson said. Man, just what a tragedy to happen to a family. And I think it changed the dynamic of the Hart family forever. Certainly changed the dynamic of the Hart family in WWE. Everybody wanted to get out, go somewhere else. Everybody was mad. Just what a fuck fest and a big old mess. And, you know, it was years and years ago. So I think we're all past it now, but it's interesting to hear that story from Tyson's perspective and from the Hart family perspective. You can catch Chris Van Vliet multiple times a week with his podcast Insight everywhere podcasts are found. You can also see clips and full interviews on his YouTube page. Just search it up. You'll find it. Talk is Jericho, baby. Talk is Jericho, mama. On Chris Jericho's podcast this week, he had Tony Khan, president, general manager, owner, whatever you want to call him, of AEW. Tony Khan talking about why there's 736 matches on AEW Dark. Check it out.
But another thing, too, that I really want to express is if anybody watches Dark, the show, which always does a strong rating, number, people go sometimes it's 2 hours long, it's half hours long. I want to tell everyone listening right now the reason for that is I'm not just saying this, but Tony Khan is such a good-hearted person that you want everybody backstage to have a match. And you want everybody backstage to get a payoff. Like, basically, that's it.
We bring in people to give them tryouts, but we've been getting a lot of independent wrestlers work in addition to the tryout people that we want to get a look at and put in specific matches. There's other people, you know, we're trying to put the top people from Dynamite and get over matches on Dark.
Sure.
And, like, you want to get some people, local people, and keep them working because there's no independent shows for all these people around Florida and Georgia like there used to be.
Like, so there's 12 matches or 15 matches on Dark. Like you said, that's a lot of it because, yes, you want to have people take a look, but you're giving people work.
Yeah.
See, that's fucking awesome. I mean, there's people that are going to still hate on AEW, but look, when the pandemic hit, WWE during the peak of this thing fires a shit ton of people, all left without a job in the middle of a pandemic with nowhere to go because the indies are fucking shut down. And what does Tony Khan do? He turns around and he takes his little fucking 1 hour YouTube show and he makes it a 7 hour YouTube show and he puts everybody on it. Gives everybody on the indies a job. Everybody in fucking Wisconsin all the way up to fucking Idaho, Indiana, professional jobber wrestling, and they all get a job at AEW doing jobs for other people on Dark. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, and it's not going to last. Obviously, the man runs a business, and he said in other interviews, look, there's people I've wanted to cut, and there's people that I probably will still cut, but right now, during a pandemic, is not the time to do that. I don't feel comfortable with it. It's not right. I need to give people jobs and security right now. What a fucking man. What a pro. What a breath of fresh air in professional wrestling. I don't give a fuck what you think. Call him a money mark all you want, but the man is doing good things for the business of professional wrestling. You can check out Chris Jericho's podcast twice a week, every Wednesday, every Friday. This Friday, he also had a couple guys on from a guy from The Room, one of the shittiest movies ever, and then another one from, I think it's called Trolls 2 or something like that. But the topic of the podcast was just the shittiest movies ever, basically. And it was a really good listen, so check that out too. But it has nothing to do with wrestling, so why the fuck am I talking about it here, right? Moving on. The Good Brothers continue to be the best part of BTE every single week. Check out this clip.
All right, look. You guys ready to get in the head of the Good Brothers?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Got the stuff.
You do it.
Way ahead of
you. Go ahead. You got it.
All right, here we go. Be careful, Quinn. Trust me, this is gonna work.
You sure?
It's not like your nacho thing.
They rang that bell and woke me up. It turned me into Festus with a PH just in case Vince still owns the name. I hate that.
God, don't ring that bell, because if he's Festus with a PH, that means I'm Jesse, and I don't want to fucking be Jesse.
I don't want to fucking be Jesse either.
Screw you guys, don't ring the bell.
You're making fun of my terrible gimmick, huh?
You're not Festus.
I'm not Festus.
You're not Festus with a PH. You're not Festus with a PH.
Laugh my fucking ass off. How great is that? Festus with a PH. The Good Brothers always knock it out of the park. They're always entertaining. I love that they're in AEW now. I love that they're back on BTE. I love this whole working relationship with other companies. Kenta now in AEW. It's a good thing for the business, especially right now where guys are hurting for work. Getting good national TV exposure for everybody involved is just a great concept. But the Good Brothers, man, funny as hell. You can check out BTE every single Monday on YouTube. Arn Anderson on the creatively and appropriately titled podcast Arn weighed in on what it would be like to have an argument with Vince McMahon.
Let's talk about Vince McMahon. Mayhem wants to know, what was it like winning an argument against Vince McMahon, or what is it like convincing him to change his mind?
Never had one of those scenarios. There's no such thing as having an argument with Vince McMahon. It's you go in, you present an idea, hoping that it's the right day, the right time of day, the mood is right. Sometimes, occasionally you will get him to review that idea and with a clear head, and sometimes you get it pushed through, but there's no such thing as having an argument. There were some, I found this amusing. There were some rumors when I first was terminated with the company that the reason was there had been quite a few backstage arguments between Vince McMahon and I. There probably would have only been one, and I would have been out the door much earlier. That's not a guy that you argue with. It's a guy that sometimes you try to reason with, and sometimes you get through, and sometimes you don't.
I'd argue with Vince McMahon all day long. I'd go right up to his goofy fucking big chin with his dimple in it, and I would say, "Sir, fuck you. Listen." And then I would be fired. No, I get it. People got to keep their jobs. People have to look out for the longevity of their career. But at the same time, Freddie Prinze Jr. said it in his interview with Chris Van Vliet the other day, talking about how a couple weeks ago, I think, a week or two ago, talking about how Stephanie told him flat out that Vince likes guys that challenge him. But we always hear that people are too scared to do it, or when they do, they don't last long. So I don't fucking know. It's hard to say, but man, what a job that would be to work for Vince McMahon, right? And to see get into some kind of confrontation or disagreement with the man. Oh, wow. What a life experience that would be. You can check out Arn every single Wednesday wherever podcasts are found. Eric Bischoff and Conrad Thompson talked about the career of the Harlem Heat this week on 83 Weeks. And they went through the entire career of Harlem Heat, from their debut as Cole and Kane, wearing chains and all that, all the way up through Booker T splitting off on his own, and Ahmed Johnson coming in, and Harlem Heat 2000, all that shit. But in this clip, Conrad and Eric Bischoff talk about the most infamous promo in professional wrestling history. Now, maybe not the most infamous. You might be able to think of another. That's fine. But certainly one of the most infamous promos in the history of professional wrestling. You know the one. You know what I'm talking about. Check out this clip.
Booker T and Stevie Ray are backstage talking to Mean Gene. We should mention we're headed towards a 4-way pay-per-view main event. And Booker T and Stevie Ray are going to be singles competitors here, I believe, with Lex Luger and the Giant. And Booker T is cutting a promo, and man, is he fired up. And after we take Lex Luger and the Giant, we want the gold, sucker. Hulk Hogan, We coming for you. And you remember what happens from there. As soon as the word leaves Booker's mouth, he puts his hands over his head like, oh God, what did I do? Sherry is like rubbing his back, trying to reassure him, and stays in character. Booker recovers, puts on the mean mug again. But in his Hall of Fame podcast, Booker T described it as the worst moment of his life in WCW. What'd you think, Eric, when you are watching the monitor and you see that promo happen and you realize, uh-oh?
I don't know what I was thinking. I was shocked. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. How do you describe shocked?
You weren't mad at him. He knew he made a mistake. It was an accident. I mean, it's not intentional.
No, it wasn't intentional. And you knew it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. Everybody knew it wasn't intentional.
Honestly, I don't think this was all that big of a deal. Eric said that there was no punishment or any kind of negative repercussions for Booker T for saying it. But Booker T's gone on record and said it's the absolute worst moment of his life. Now, worst moment? I don't know, because me personally, I would think going to prison for 5 years for armed robbery might be the worst moment of someone's life, but certainly of his professional career, this was the worst moment. He's been on record of saying that many times. I don't see the big deal. Now, granted, I'm a white boy, so what the fuck do I know, right? It's not for me to say. But to me, there's no harm in the way that he said the word. It's been used before. Vince McMahon has used it on national TV. I'm not an advocate for the word, but for fuck's sakes, I think Booker's being way too hard on himself about this. I think he needed to just kind of brush that one off and, move on with his life, because it wasn't a big deal, but it does remain one of, if not the most infamous promos in professional wrestling history, immortalized in the intro to Botchamania. You can check out Eric Bischoff and Conrad Thompson every single Monday on 83 Weeks, everywhere podcasts are found. On Keeping It 100, Disco Inferno retorted DDP's comments on the Chris Jericho podcast. If you remember, about 2 weeks ago, I did a clip from that podcast where Chris Jericho and DDP had an awkward conversation about homosexuality in professional wrestling in regards to Chris Kanyon. But in that comment, in that clip, in that interview, DDP compared him to Disco Inferno. And basically just outright said Disco was gay. Now, Disco, when I first heard that, I didn't know that Disco was gay. I had not heard that. It didn't surprise me any. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. And fine by him, whatever. But it did kind of strike me like, I don't know that I had heard that. And I thought to myself, did DDP just out Disco? But, I wasn't going to bring it up on the podcast, because what if I was wrong? What if everybody kind of knew low key or high key and I just didn't even fucking know that Disco was gay? And I'm just like over here, oh, I hadn't heard that, so this is news. Let me put it on my podcast. But it was news to me, and now apparently it was news to everybody, because somebody commented about it and wrote into the Keeping It 100 and asked flat out, now that you were outed by DDP, are you going to do a hand job or whatever the fuck? Check out this clip.
Liverpool, England here. Just listen to the Kanyon Memorial episode on Talk is Jericho with a panel including Shane Helms and DDP. When Kanyon's sexuality is raised, Payne mentioned that he never knew but didn't have a problem with it and compares it with Disco's behavior and sexuality. I need to hear that clip. That's exactly how he's saying that. I don't know what he means there. What are Disco and Conan's thoughts on DDP finally outing Disco, and will this allow Disco to finally embrace the handjob of the week and be his true self? Keep up the good work. KG is a piece of shit. Sent from my iPhone.
Do you happen to have this clip, Joe?
No, I couldn't find it, but I will locate it and make sure that we are able to comment on it tomorrow.
No, I don't. Paige obviously doesn't think I'm gay. I think he may be talking about compared to my character. I don't know. Nobody had a when
I always found it weird that you and Kid Romeo shared a car, the back seat all the time, and slept back there. But I don't know. You guys could have been what you told me. You were going over the match for the next day, so it could have been that. Bro, let me tell you. I don't know, because I didn't go out much with DDP because he was in a whole different clique than I was in. I'm pretty sure we never went out anywhere. But I went out a lot with Disco. and I'd rather bury this than put him over. He got a lot of that's all I know. Bro, good looking guy with always dressed nice and was
Italian, dark,
dressed nice,
tan, had a
went
nice
to the
hair.
best clubs,
right.
hung out with
Come
cool.
on.
We were killing
Kidding
it, bro. If you were in our clique and you weren't killing it with the girls, you weren't in our clique. That's all there was to it.
Now, they didn't have the clip, and Disco sort of thought maybe DDP was talking about his character. DDP wasn't talking about his character. As a matter of fact, here's the clip right here.
And I told Kimberly, Chris Kanyon came out. And she went, what? I said, yeah. She goes, wow. I consider myself that pretty good gaydar. And I never picked up on that at all.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many beers Chris and I drank that I'd never, because he's a regular dude. And that's what people don't understand. Like someone like Sonny is a different animal. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's a dude. He was a guy who liked guys, but I never even really picked up on it. You could say the same thing about Disco, but I never really thought about Disco like that either. I just saw they love what they're doing so much they're preoccupied. Kind of like asexual is if I would have put anything on it.
So as you can see, sir and ma'am, DDP did in fact out Disco Inferno as being gay. But if you go back to the clip previously between Disco and Conan says Disco got all kinds of pussy. Now, men can be bisexual just like women. And certainly a lot of gay men, especially when they're trying to hide in the closet or they're not ready to come out yet, do in fact fuck a lot of bitches. I've seen it in my own personal life. Gay guys get pussy. Lots of it. So who the fuck knows? But it's interesting. I thought it was interesting because I just kind of dismissed it and brushed it off. And all of a sudden, Disco's on here completely denying it, which is fine, man. Like, if he's gay, he's gay. Who cares? Not even surprised. But if he's not, then DDP, either way, DDP shouldn't have said anything. And I, that's why I labeled it an awkward conversation. But that and the Sunny Kiss comment I thought was pretty weird too. But I don't know. Like I said, I didn't know much about it. Didn't really want to comment on that part of it. But now the plot thickens. Now I'm interested. Now I want to see how this plays out. Because they also said on the next episode they're going to actually listen to it. Or they will have listened to it by then. And like I said, DDP definitely wasn't talking about the Disco Inferno character. He was talking about Glenn Gilberti. So let's see where this goes. But I just thought that was interesting and a nice little follow-up from the previous episode, 2 episodes ago. And we will watch the drama unfold. Keeping It 100 drops every single Monday. They also got the clips on YouTube and all that shit. Go check them out. It's always fun to listen to Conan and Disco just hate on everything. Good old JR and Conrad Thompson had a conversation about the career of Ron Simmons this week on Grilling JR. Excellent in-depth review on the career of Ron Simmons. And there was this interesting point in Ron's career where he makes his debut to the WWE and he's got this goofy fucking shit on. Check it out.
What do you remember about recruiting Ron Simmons to come back to wrestling and join the World Wrestling Federation?
We just had to give Ron the confidence that he would be booked correctly. He would not be an afterthought. He would not be a token black, all those things. So, and getting over that was challenging because he's not a smart guy. He understood what went on in Atlanta and what he's a victim of, yay or nay. So, but it's no brainer to get the guy signed. I mean, golly, he's still young and athletic, looked great. And so, but then all of a sudden, when you unwrap the new Ron Simmons in WWE, it's a ridiculous.
Let's talk about it. Farouk Assad is his new name. He's a gladiator gimmick. He's wearing a black and blue gladiator outfit with a misshaped helmet that looks fucking stupid. And he's managed by Sonny, I guess even in New York. That's heat, brother. He eventually just became known as Farouk, but for the first several months, he's wearing this awful outfit, almost like a cartoon character. I mean, this has to be Ron's biggest fear, right? I didn't want to come back and do a bunch of silly shit, and now I'm back, and what the fuck is this helmet, and why is Sonny with me, right?
Yep. Yeah. He's just traveling the same road.
Yeah, man, that shit looked ridiculous. I was a kid at that time. Still pretty fresh to the wrestling business, but I had been watching it for probably a few years by that point. And I remembered Ron Simmons. I was there. I was watching WCW when he had his run as champion. I remember that. And when he came to the WWF at that time, I recognized him. I knew exactly who Ron Simmons was. I was excited to see him. But what the fuck was he wearing, though, right? The fucking helmet and the weird... He looked so goofy, man. And some of the shit that WWE tried, but... Look, that's one of those examples of getting your foot in the door. Same with Isaac Yankem, DDS, or the fake Diesel. Like, sometimes you get a shitty gimmick and you're just fucked. That's it. You got a shitty gimmick and you got nowhere to go. Other times, you got your foot in that door, and if you can show them something, they'll find something else for you, or you will find a way through. You'll last, and the cream always rises to the top. And Ron Simmons, absolutely a Hall of Fame talent, absolutely, found his way in the WWE, despite his goofy fucking helmet and name and gimmick when he first arrived. Check out this other clip here from the same episode now, where JR talks about a backstage incident between Ron Simmons and Ahmed Johnson.
As Mark Henry tells the story, Ron Simmons effectively ended Ahmed Johnson's career after Ahmed injured him in the ring. Henry recalled that Johnson put Simmons out for 9 months, and that Simmons' payback was being put on the shelf. And then when he came back, he destroyed Ahmed in his first match back. Apparently Simmons had been telling people he was going to kick Ahmed's ass. He told Teddy Long and he told Mark Henry. And here's what Mark Henry said to Steve Austin. I remember it being a sellout. For those that don't know what a sellout is, I'm not talking about all the tickets in the arena. I'm talking about when all the boys are standing at the curtain and they're peeking through because they want to watch what's going to happen rather than watching on a monitor or being in the gorilla position. All the boys were watching, and I remember standing next to D'Lo, and D'Lo hated Ahmed. They even had a fight earlier in the year where D'Lo stretched his ass. Triple H had a run in with him, and he threatened to beat up Hunter, and he was going to make him. And D'Lo said, nobody's making anybody. And that's when they got in a fight. But D'Lo's standing there next to me, and he says, hey, this ain't going to take long. And it was a mauling. Ron ran through him. He hit his back on the ground. Ron stomped on his stomach. And when he rolled over and tried to get up, Ron kicked him in the ribs and broke 3 ribs. I mean, it was like watching a tiger or a lion or something attack a helpless animal in the wild. And Ron pinned him. And at this time, Ahmed Johnson was over as hell. The only person getting a reaction like him was Steve Austin. He was that over. And then 6 months later, he was done. He got killed off in one night. It was in one night when Ron Simmons came back and whooped his ass. He was run over and he was never the same, and he had to leave. He couldn't be here no more.
I always love the backstage fight stories. Those are always the most interesting, right? Hearing about who's big badass and what kind of scraps went down and all that good stuff. Ron Simmons, unfuckwittable, as they say in the podcast. And I'm going to leave it at that. Check out Grillin' JR. Drops every single Thursday wherever podcasts are found. Buy his barbecue sauce. Buy his book. Buy me his book. And get it personalized to Seth Grimes. And I will love you forever. Until somebody else buys me a book. And then I'll love them. I'll transfer my love from you to them. Here's Scorpio Sky on the AEW Unrestricted podcast talking about where he got his name from and his mixed martial arts career. Check it out.
I was training. There was no discussion of it. But when it came close to when I was going to make my debut, my trainer said, I think we should start you with a mask. And then a couple of years later, we can take it off and go from there. And I was like, oh, cool. That's great. And so that's actually part of where the name came from, because you know, there aren't too many masked wrestlers that wrestle under their like real name. Like you don't see masked guys named Ben, you know, what should we call it? You know, like with just real names. And so when I was training, my trainer thought I resembled Too Cold Scorpio because at the time I had like the same ponytail that he had. And so he would just call me Scorpio. So I didn't know what to wrestle as when it was like the day before my first match. And he's like, why don't we just call you Scorpio Sky and then we'll change it later. I was like, cool, that sounds good. I just never changed it.
Don't fix what ain't broken.
Right. You also have a background in MMA, correct?
That is right.
Tell us about that.
I had 4 MMA fights. I went 3-1. Should have been 4-0. The last one was a split decision that I think I should have won, but you know, it was close. It was a really close fight. It was a good fight.
I always wondered why he went with Scorpio Sky. It sounded like Too Cold Scorpio. Why would you want to pick a name like that? But now listening to this, it makes perfect sense. So I get where they're coming from with that. You can check out AEW Unrestricted every single Thursday, wherever your podcasts are found. Thanks again for checking out the Pro Wrestling Podcast. I am your humble host, Seth Grimes. It is my honor and my privilege to sit here behind a microphone and speak to you on a weekly basis about these pro wrestling podcasts that we all listen to and enjoy. And that's what we're here to do, is just talk about that shit. Just have a good time. I appreciate you taking that time to hang out with me. If you can give me a follow on social media, it's at Seth Grimes Media. You can find me on Twitter. I'll be on the other ones sometime soon, I suppose. You can also find the show on YouTube. Throw it a subscribe, like it. You can just search Pro Wrestling Podcast. You can search Seth Grimes. You can search Go Fuck Yourself. Whatever you like, find it, like it, subscribe it if you like it, and subscribe to it. That's all. That's all I got to say. That's it. The show's done. Get the fuck out of here now. Hit end, press the pause, stop button. Go listen to something else. Bye.